Welcome to the Total Soccer Show Weekend Review. It was another dramatic weekend in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest 5-0 shellacking, bringing plenty of intrigue. Man City got a big win with some new players inserted, so maybe, after flopping in Paris, it's crisis averted. Another loss for Tottenham made the mood among their fans heavy, but they're not calling for Big Ange to go. It's Daniel Levy. Liverpool won again and Everton are looking lean, while Arsenal were given one of the worst red cards that you've ever seen. In Serie A, Napoli stayed top with the guy Daniel Levy fired, while Milan squeezed a win with a late show that was truly inspired. Elsewhere, Bayern, Real Madrid and Barcelona showed no signs of slacking, and please forgive us if this podcast comes out right before Postecoglou's sacking. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today is your friend, it's my friend, Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan. People who think we have a vendetta against Spurs are going to love that introduction, and I think love this episode on the whole. I'm excited.
No vendetta here, right?
I don't think so. I think it's just sort of the state of the situation at Tottenham.
Just keep
but
losing.
I think, but I think with Manchester United, I'm a Manchester United supporter, so I think I am more emotional about it, but also inclined to defend certain aspects of the club, and I think we don't have a Tottenham supporter amongst us. So maybe when we talk about Tottenham, there's a vibe of they are ridiculous, and maybe people don't always love that.
We do have a Big Ange supporter, though, amongst us, so I'll be emotional if and when that day comes.
And that Big Ange supporter is Graham Ruffin. Hello, Graham. How are you?
I'm good, Ryan Bailey. Did you have a better weekend than either Big Ange or Abdul Kadir Khusanov? Where was it on the scale of weekends?
I mean, if that's the baseline, it was a great weekend. Thank you for asking, Graham. Yes.
How many times do we think Graham practiced saying Abdul Kadir?
At least 3.
Yeah,
At
right?
least
It
3.
is written phonetically in my notes.
Attaboy. Very good. My including of Postecoglou, Graham, in the intro was just to give us a safety in case he is fired on this Monday as we record. It doesn't seem like he will be. It seems like maybe they're just going to delay the inevitable there, but we'll talk about that when we talk about Spurs later on. Also joining us live from Arizona, no longer in Europe, it's Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm good. It's so much less cool to say live from Arizona rather than from France or wherever, but I'm happy to be back home. It is always nice to return after a vacation. I will also say, I think I found a way to get us around our we don't have a Tottenham fan amongst us problem. Let's just hold a drawing, and whoever draws the short straw gets to be the Tottenham fan amongst the 4 of us. I'm down.
Wow.
Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
I drew the straw, and it's Joe. Joe, congratulations. You are a new Tottenham supporter.
Off to a good
It cannot
start.
be Ryan, and I don't think it can be Graham, and it certainly can't be me. It's
Off
Joe.
to a good start in my Tottenham fandom. I did not watch them play this weekend, and I think my weekend was probably enhanced because of that. So,
I like how Joe is pretending he's back in Arizona. We all know that it's the same green screen behind him, and he just, last week he set it to Eiffel Tower. Today he's got that palm tree behind him again.
Yeah, it is.
It just stays in the same place.
Yeah.
If you want visual proof of that, listener, we're on YouTube, by the way. You can check us out there. All our episodes are up there, alive and kicking. So go check us out there. And also, if you're messing around on the internet, why not check out patreon.com/Total Soccer Show? That is the best way to support our endeavor. Bonus episodes, including but not limited to Weekend Review Extra weekend coming your way there, plus videos and access to our Discord where all the cool kids are hanging out. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Oh, I've just been informed, Taylor, we're doing another draw for Tottenham. If the injury crisis continues again, one of us has to play for them next week as well, so we'll draw lots for that too. So
I saw a lot of speculation as to whether or not they should sign James Milner or John O'Shea to fill in all of the many gaps they have in their squad, and I think one of them might do the job. It's probably James Milner more so than John O'Shea at this point.
I think let's just get Paul Scholes back. He could do the job, right? Do you think?
That should work. That should go fine. Yeah, let's do that.
Back in central defence with Archie Gray. That's what I want to see.
And red card. Cool. Yeah.
Hey, very good. We'll get to Tottenham shortly, but not before we kick off proceedings at Eastlands, where Man City had a 3-1 win over Chelsea. The aforementioned Mr. Khusanov, not a great debut, giving up the first goal for Chelsea. It took a while to settle in, I think it's fair to say. Robert Sanchez getting caught out for Chelsea, out of position for Erling Haaland's decisive goal in this one too. Then Mr. Phil Foden topping it off with his 5th goal in 4 games. Foden, he back. The extended City unbeaten run in the league goes to 6 games now. Good bounce back from the Champions League defeat midweek in Paris as well. Taylor, what did we think about Manchester City's performance here? Did we notice any differences in the way they're approaching things?
Yes, we certainly did. I want to start with Khusanov for a moment, though. because that is a rough one, to say the least. Graham asked me last week. Graham, who was the player that you were asking about if it was a quicksand game? Or which team was it? Do you remember?
It was Chesney. Chesney for Barcelona in the Champions League.
Yeah. This is the definition of a quicksand game, if people haven't seen one before. Once you make the obvious mistake, the very bad attempted back pass header, from there on, you can see him being like, I have to complete this pass. If I don't complete this pass, I played it to the other team. And he just stops being able to make fundamental plays to the point where I forget which Chelsea player. I think it was Nicholas Jackson after he earns a yellow card, basically, because Khusanov lunges in on a player. Comes over and gives him a pat on the back. When the opposition is being like, it's okay, buddy. You're doing your best. And it's a credit to City supporters that when he does have a very routine back pass to Ederson, the goalkeeper, there is a sort of a genuine cheer, I think. I don't think it was sarcastic.
That is worse. A pity clap.
I mean, they're trying to, get his confidence back. And to be fair, he does have the block on Jadon Sancho when it looked like Chelsea were going to score. Khusanov does do a good job of sort of staying alive to the threat. So at the very least, he redeems himself a little, but maybe not fully. But it doesn't really end up mattering because City get the win. And I do think we saw a different look from Manchester City in this game. I feel like we're used to seeing them in the very standard 3-2-5 that Joe has spotlighted many times, to the point where I now find it incredibly dull as soon as I see two teams doing that. I'm like, oh, well, okay, we know what this is going to be. Chelsea did something a little bit different, City did something a little bit different, which was basically, it felt like, go back to kind of the basics. It felt like they had two center backs who stayed home. They had two fullbacks who got into very attacking positions. They had three central midfielders ahead of those two who I think played a little bit deeper, possessed the ball. And then when they came under pressure, because that meant Chelsea had a high back line, they went direct to Erling Howland, who then had space to attack. Marmoush as well had plenty of space to attack, and it felt like a good mix of possession with direct attacks, and they benefited from it with the win.
There you go. Joe, you ever had a worse first day in the job than Khusanov did for this?
I don't think so. I genuinely felt so bad. I'm also Team Taylor on the clapping from the City fans. I thought that was nice, even if Graham thought it was a pity clap, which I suppose it was. But it was a brutal start for really not just Khusanov, although he was the poster child for this. City in general started really poorly in this game. I believe it's Marmoush who gives up that ball in midfield that Chelsea pounce on and then immediately run down an attack, and that's their second really, really good chance off of a almost unforced kind of Man City error. That's in the 9th minute, and Chelsea could have been 2-0 up at that point. And the game probably looks very different if Chelsea are able to convert on that counterattack. With that being said, I actually thought Marmoush looked quite good in this game, and I really enjoyed his energetic movement off the ball. It's very early, the 2nd minute, where he's sneaking in behind the back line, and Nunes plays that bent ball with the right foot for Marmoush to run onto. It ends up being offside, and so it doesn't matter. But there were a number of those really well-timed off-ball movements from Marmoush, and he seemed so dangerous, popping up in different spots in the box throughout this game. I really enjoyed what he brought as sort of a secondary runner behind Erling Howland, and obviously he's got quality on the ball as well. And I love the point that Taylor's making about the different possession structure for Man City. I went back and looked, and most often this season we have seen them possess in a back three when you look at average positioning for Man City. But in this game, Taylor was absolutely right. It was much more of a 2-3-5, which is, it really was back to basics. Center backs, full backs pushing forward, wingers tucking inside. We've seen this stuff before. But I thought it served them quite well in this game. And after they got their initial, lumps out of the way from all their unforced errors and mistakes, City controlled a lot of this game. Chelsea didn't do a ton of super meaningful stuff after the first 30, maybe 20 minutes or so of this match. And City knew exactly where they could hurt Chelsea. They knew that the space was in behind. You could see it from the opening moments of this game, and they took advantage of it. Erling Haaland, I thought, was excellent in the second half especially, and City were, on the whole, once they got past the nightmares, they were the better team and the deserved winners in this game. Yeah.
I thought Haaland's performance was particularly encouraging because he's still a goal bot with incredible numbers, right? But if City are going to lean into this more direct style of play, which I think Marmoush is an indicator that's the direction they want to go in, and also Guardiola has made some comments this week about the direct style of play being a little bit more modern, which, by the way, makes me feel incredibly old that we have swung one way and then we're swinging all the way back again to this direct, 1990s style of football. Yes, welcome to the 90s, Joe. It's finally here. But Haaland is going to need to improve his hold-up play and bring others into the game, and that's often been a criticism of him when City play that way. And part of that has been down to the fact that City previously this season weren't able to get anyone up near Erling Haaland. But in this game, he had Foden, he had Marmoush making runs beyond. The third goal is obviously the best example of this, where he holds it up and then passes it on to Foden, who's in behind. So it was encouraging from Howland that he was a greater part of that possession game from City.
I do have thoughts on Erling Haaland, Graham, but instead I have to ask you this. How do you feel about this scenario? I went to a VCU basketball game on Friday, and the theme was 90s throwback night, where they gave all the students in the student section fanny packs. How do we feel about the 90s being the vintage throwback evening?
Well, I mean, City are already wearing Oasis kits this season, so they've had their 90s throwback season.
Hang on, Taylor.
Yeah, season, not just night.
Talk to me about the music at this game. What was playing?
I think the band, the VCU band, did play some 90s stuff. I feel like there was some Blink-182 in there, but then it was a lot of the kind of same. The VCU band is the best part of the basketball games, and the basketball team is pretty good themselves. So that was enjoyable. The 90s throwback, less so. The people that I was with all, I think, wore what they wear usually, and I think that was fitting for 90s throwback. So
I want listeners to know, viewers will see this, I want listeners to know that when Taylor mentioned 90s throwback night, Ryan's face got about 6 inches away from his webcam. Like he was involved in that conversation. He was ready to participate. He was ready to one-two touch with Taylor, like wall pass. He was involved in that moment.
Finally felt seen, Joe. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
nice.
but Haaland was good.
I mean, it interests me, Joe, because I support a team when they were in the Premier League back in the day. Got called dinosaurs for having a very direct approach and getting it up to the big man, and now it's the.
It is certainly coming back.
Wimbledon.
Well, and the reason why that this is better than the 90s, sorry, Ryan, I don't know if that's possible in your mind, but the reason why this is like an evolution on that is City can do both, right? And I think that's where we will see Man City with their attacking scheme. Their defensive stuff is still problematic without Rodri and some of the timing in midfield. But we'll see City not just play the ball long, though they can do when they're up against a high back line like Chelsea's was. That's important to note. City won't be this aggressive and vertical in every game because not every team is going to defend with that line that high compared to Chelsea. But City can also move the ball out of the back, right? And that's what we didn't have in the 90s and the footage I've seen from the 1990s anyway. Like that was not a thing, and to have teams that can do both, like Liverpool have done both of those things this season.
Yes.
Arsenal at their best can do both of those things. City with Haaland can absolutely go vertical, but I do think there is something, even though it's early days, to the idea of having another player, like you said, Graham, someone around Erling Haaland, and Marmoush seems to fit that mold really well. It's still too early for me to know exactly how Pep wants to use those players together. And again, with just how high that back line was for Chelsea, it was almost like Chelsea and Maresca made the decisions for Manchester City rather than City having to do that themselves. But interesting building blocks and little evolutions along the way.
Joe, the Liverpool point is interesting because obviously Liverpool came from the Klopp side of things of being more direct, and it looks like City have looked at that and thought, we want to be more like Liverpool, and Man City obviously had the possession-based stuff, and Liverpool with Slot, and even before Slot comes in with Jurgen Klopp have looked at City and gone, we want to be more like City, and ultimately the two of them are going to meet in the middle and basically be the same team.
I think, but with City, though, I do think there is so much focus on possession, and there has been so much focus on possession and keeping the ball but moving the ball at the same time. I don't feel like it has been quite so aggressive as we've seen from Liverpool in seasons past. And instead what I saw in this game was almost sort of baiting Chelsea into pressing higher and stepping higher up the pitch. And if they don't, then I think there's plenty of time for City players who have the technical ability to pick out sort of like through balls and good diagonals and threatening balls in behind to do that, or just kind of combine through the middle and then tear open a defense. But if the opposition, in this case Chelsea, steps higher, floods numbers further forward, and tries to contain that midfield three, now you leave Erling Haaland in a 1v1 situation, or you leave Marmoush in a 1v1 situation, and that is where you can then exploit with the kind of direct pass. And so I think in that way, it gives City two very different options, both of which it seems they are more than capable of executing, and it does make me a little bit nervous about what's going to happen with Man City for the rest of the season, because we've seen them in the past kind of figure things out midway through the campaign, make some adjustments, bring in a new player or two, and then off they go. I don't think that they are going to rattle off the string of results that we've seen them do in the past, but this was a very strong performance, as Joe said, after they get out some of the kinks early on. I did think this was on the whole a sloppier game from both teams than we're used to. I think some of that is because they're both very good. Some of that is maybe because Man City were figuring out a new approach, and once they did, they scored 3 goals.
Yeah. Just to very quickly highlight another City player who I thought gave them something a little bit different, another wrinkle, and that was Matheus Nunes at right back. So at the left back, Gvardiol seemed to be back to the player we saw in the second half of last season with the runs down the left side and getting into the box for the equaliser. There is a good Michael Cox piece on The Athletic today about how Gvardiol remains as he puts it, Man City's most important attacking player, which I never thought would be the case when they signed him as like a centre-back, but that is the player he's become for Man City. On the right side, Matheus Nunes is an interesting player because Pep hasn't really known what to do with him over the past couple seasons. He was signed as a central midfielder coming in from Wolves. That's the position he played in Portugal as well, but he's been played on the wing this season. Pep doesn't seem to trust him as a central midfielder. Now he's settled in at right back for the last couple of games, and I thought he had a rough game against PSG in the Champions League just because he doesn't have the defensive instincts of a defender, basically. And so if you have players running at you for the full game, as PSG did in that game with Bradley Barcola and Ousmane Dembele, then that's going to be a rough one for him. But here, I find him really interesting, and he interprets that position differently to Kyle Walker, who's obviously this safety net for Man City, or was this safety net. He's off to AC Milan now on loan until the end of the season. But he doesn't have the recovery speed or general defensive instincts that Kyle Walker does, but he gives them a lot in possession, and he was making these really interesting outside-in runs from the right side, which was doing even more to disrupt the Chelsea backline. So I'm interested to see if that's a long-term thing or maybe just a stopgap thing for City right now.
Very good.
Final note. Sorry, Ryan, before we go. Joe, I just checked the running order for today. Is your final note on this game, is that sarcasm or real? Because either way, I think it's great.
I'm pulling up the running order now. What did I say in this?
I don't think Holland gets enough credit for his strength.
I know. I'm being completely serious
Okay.
about that.
Okay,
We've
cool.
already talked about it, so I didn't need to raise it again. But
All right.
Howland gets touted as a pace merchant, which he is. But the dude is absolutely a force with his back to goal
He's a
at times.
wall.
So
Dude,
but
it's ridiculous.
I genuinely don't think he gets enough credit for that, because it's all about Howland being played in behind and him making those runs and finishing on the left foot. Like, that was what he was known as coming from Salzburg and Dortmund into the Premier League. And now he is just a more well-rounded player. Like, he bodies Chalobah and then absolutely holds off Colwell, which we've already talked about that sequence on the third goal. But both of the second and third goals, and he scores the second and Foden gets the third, are Erling Haaland, not the pace merchant, but Erling Haaland, the physical specimen. And I don't think that gets talked about enough.
And to your point about him being more rounded, sorry, Ryan, this is my final point on this game. I think also in the hold-up for the Foden goal, it is not easy to control that ball with somebody on your back and then still know exactly the pass you need to play a player through while you're facing the opposite direction. I think that little bit of ability is maybe a thing that has improved, or certainly has improved, since he's been with Man City, and he's just had to become a more technical player. So I think we saw all of the strong aspects of his game on display in this one. Credit to him.
It's just interesting that Graham doesn't rate him, which I just never understood. But, you know.
He's a big Khusanov guy, Graham is.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, especially the first 10 minutes version of Khusanov.
When Norway beat Scotland home and away in crucial World Cup qualifiers, then I'll listen.
Gotcha. All right. That's how it is, huh?
Graham's not going to be listening for a while, it seems, but a big test pass for Manchester City in a big week for them. They've got the Champions League match day of chaos coming up on Wednesday, where they need to get a result against Club Bruges, and then next Sunday, Arsenal. They head to the Emirates, Taylor.
Ryan, I'm reporting from the future. They got that result against Bruges.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. It was a 4-0, was it? Yep.
Four. It might have been 4-1 late. I turned it off.
Excellent. Well, it's good to know that we'll cover that in more detail in the Champions League later on this week. By the way, Taylor, one final note on the 90s revival basketball game you went to. I'm coming back there. You asked whether it was incredulous that there is a 90s revival night. Remember, when we were at school, it's the same equivalent as a 60s throwback night. It's the same time difference. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth.
Shut in my mouth, taking a quick break. When we come back, more Premier League. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our weekend review. We go now to Bournemouth 5, Nottingham Forest 0. Graham, goodness me, what happened here? We know Bournemouth are good, but Forest, we didn't expect to concede 5 unanswered goals, right?
I certainly didn't expect that. I think they've conceded, I saw a stat that was like the number of goals, the percentage of goals they conceded in this game related to the whole season was something like 27% or something like that, because obviously their defence has been a key reason why they're so high in the Premier League. But Bournemouth are a serious team as well, and they are on a serious run at the moment. They thumped Newcastle at St James's Park last weekend. We spoke about that on last week's weekend review. They're unbeaten in their last 11 league games. And you have to say that they are serious contenders, not just to qualify for European competition, but for the Champions League at this point. The Premier League is going to get 5 spots this season. I know that didn't happen last season. That was a bit of a surprise. It'll happen this season. And so the bar is lower for Bournemouth to qualify. Chelsea are falling away. Manchester United are nowhere near. Spurs are nowhere near. The door is open for a team like Bournemouth to get into the top 5. And you watch this game, and their attack in this match was absolutely rampant. Justin Kluivert gets another goal, and I mentioned last week after the game at Newcastle. But something I mentioned this last week, but something Bournemouth do when Kluivert gets the ball in the run is they send runners ahead of him to pin the defenders back, and we saw that with his goal. It's Semenyo, Brooks, and Utara that make those runs, and then Kluivert just has so much space for the shot, and sure, he has to finish from outside the box, but he's completely unopposed. He's got time and space to pick his spot. Utara, I mentioned him there. I thought was outstanding, and is actually Bournemouth's third choice centre forward at the moment. So Evan Nielsen is out injured. Who's the other one? Is it Unal? Enes Unal is out injured as well. And Bournemouth have a lot of injuries at the moment. I think they've got a full team out through injuries right now, which makes Spurs look really, really bad right now. But they were all watching from the TV studio at the Vitality Stadium, where they're all watching the game, and it was pretty funny. But yeah, very impressed with Bournemouth, and their attack is something serious.
I liked, Graham, how all the injured players, 10 plus injuries, by the way, are not collapsing like Spurs, we can say, for Bournemouth as a credit to them. But when you say that all the players were watching in that sort of TV studio, it looked like they were in, like, you remember when David Blaine was in a box above the Thames? They were all like suspended above the stadium going, we want to play, but
I could have had 1,000 guesses as to what you were going to say next, and I would not have gotten it right. Well played.
That's what it was, Graf. That's what it looked like. Joe, what do we make of Bournemouth here? Obviously, Otara with the hat-trick looking fantastic. Kluivert with that brilliant opening strike. Tyler Adams getting in on the action here with some... as our assist correspondent, Joe, how do you respond to that?
2 of them. 2 assists, Joe.
I can say with absolute certainty that Tyler Adams deserves the vast majority of the credit for Patrick Kluivert's opening goal. I just don't think there's any way that was going to be scored, and it's not Patrick, it's Justin, and now I've gone and done it. Ryan, you're polluting my mind. You did this last week, did you not? It sounds familiar. I can say with absolute certainty that there's no way that goal would have been scored if Tyler Adams doesn't feed him the ball 87,000 yards from goal. Tyler Adams was really good in this game, to be serious for a second. I thought he was excellent covering ground in midfield. He, on the third Bournemouth goal, steps in, wins the ball, plays it forward. It is a classic Tyler Adams moment of him being the counterpress and him being the one who kickstarts attacks. Taylor's holding up a piece of paper that says Ballon d'Or for those listening along at home instead of watching. Yeah, why not? Let's do it. This game truly was a reminder for me of how singular Tyler Adams is when he is fully fit. Like there are not very many players in the world who are better at the things that he is awesome at than Tyler Adams. And he's also not good at some other stuff, which is why he's playing for Bournemouth and not for Liverpool. But that's how it goes. I really enjoyed watching Bournemouth in this game. I don't think they were 5 goals better than Forest, to be honest. They created some decent chances. They were ruthless. They were ruthless. They finished really well in this game, and that's not the kind of thing that you expect to see happen over and over and over again. But for Forest, we just had a listener question about them, and are they sustainably this good as the third team in the table? I think this game was coming for them, and that the answer is no. Defensively, they are quite a good team, and it takes you being hot from a finishing perspective to bludgeon them like this. The attack, though, is still a problem, and defensively, I don't know that they are elite enough to continue to carry right where they are right now, especially with City breathing down their necks. But even still, this is more for Bournemouth. This game is more about Bournemouth for me than it is about Forest. They were fun and good, and watching Tyler Adams be fun and good was awesome. I enjoyed this one a ton.
Just one further beat on Tyler Adams. Joe, I won't enrage you by talking a bit further about the 2 assists because they're kind of just like 5 to 10 yard passes and the attacking player does the rest. But for the Otara goal, the recognition from Adams to jump in there and win the loose ball, that's the Tyler Adams moment from that goal. And that's the kind of moment we're seeing repeatedly for Tyler Adams in this Bournemouth team. I said it, I can't remember if it was last week or a couple of weeks ago. Tyler Adams makes Bournemouth a better attacking team because basically he gives their attacking players, including Ryan Christie, who he plays in central midfield alongside, who is more attack-minded by nature, he gives them the freedom to push forward. And I think we saw that in this game.
Yeah, and not just the freedom to push forward, but also he gives them more reps, right? Like that's a huge value of having a ball winner like Tyler Adams in your midfield is he is going to get your team the ball more often than if you're playing with someone else in that spot. You know, obviously there are turnovers as well in possession, and so you lose some of that edge. But if you have just a truly elite player in those defensive transition kind of moments, if you've got that player in your team, your attackers are going to have more opportunities to do stuff. And this game was the perfect example of that.
There you go. Very good stuff indeed for Bournemouth, who are on course for a new club record for wins, points, and finish in the Premier League. Taylor, any more on this game before we jog on?
Tyler Adams, Ballon d'Or. That's it. I'm good.
Ballon d'Or, indeed. And
Well, I mean, if
Bournemouth,
Rodri is getting one these days, then, you know.
Ballon d'Or, Ballon d'Or, Ballon d'Or, Ballon d'Or.
All right, Rio.
I think about that video on a daily basis. That's the funniest video to me.
And he
on the
didn't even
planet.
win it.
Imagine being a former, like a legendary former player, like someone that is very, very well known. You're very good. You are doing just fine, and feeling so. Feeling like just like you have to say that, like you have to do it, and it's so cringe, and it's so funny to me, and I'll never not think about it.
glad to hear that haunts your dreams, Joe. Bournemouth next up. They are hosting Liverpool, so a nice big test for them as well. Let's go to the Molineux, where Arsenal got a 1-0 win over Wolves. Riccardo Calafiori with the goal to get 10-man Arsenal to a Premier League win in this game after Miles Lewis-Skelly's rather controversial red card.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
One. Yeah, so Alan Shearer, Graham, called it one of the worst decisions he's seen in a long time. We also had João Gomez getting sent off later, also for what I would argue is 2 soft yellow cards in this one as well. But can you talk us through the Lewis-Skelly red card, which I was surprised by because it didn't seem like one.
First of all, sorry, before Graham goes, we're all in agreement that Lewis-Skelly is a pirate, no doubt. Like, he's a pirate moonlighting as a soccer player. All right, cool. Go ahead, Graham.
Miles Lewis-Skelly as well. That's a great full name. It's a great handle for him. I'm pleased for him. This is the big talking point of the match, and it completely changed the dynamic, at least until João Gomez got sent off in the second half. So basically, to set the scene for anyone who hasn't seen it, Arsenal are high up the pitch. I think they have is it a corner kick or a set piece high up the pitch. Wolves win it. They come away on the break, and Miles Lewis-Skelly, the pirate, is on the edge of the box. And we've seen it a million times in soccer where it's a cynical foul, and he brings down. I actually can't really remember who the Wolves player is in this moment, but he brings down the Wolves player, and it's a red card. So I fear I'm going to rile up some Arsenal fans here, and potentially Ryan, given what he said at the top of the show. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a red. I'm starting there. But I heard the reaction to this before I saw it. I heard the Alan Shearer stuff of it's the worst decision I've ever seen, the Mikel Arteta stuff, and so I was expecting the worst decision of all time. It is a bad decision, but Lewis-Skelly does scrape his studs down the shin of the Wolves player. I think that's what the VAR and the referees have seen. Now, it's not excessive force. He's 90 yards from goal. It's a bad call. I'm not trying to argue that. But one of the worst decisions of all time? I don't know. I don't know if it falls into that category.
Do you think it's because he's so pirate-centric that like they just prejudged him for being a pirate? His pirate nickname has to be Bones, right? Lewis Bones Skelly? That's what I've been thinking about.
I think that's every pirate's nickname, though.
Graham, you have to. Maybe he did scrape his studs, but that was his peg leg that did that. He doesn't have full control over it.
Sure, that explains it. That must have been the reason for it, yeah.
I didn't expect this bit to have the staying power that it clearly does.
The reason, Graham, surely, I appreciate your comments. Maybe it's not the worst thing that's ever happened in the world of soccer, but it was a foul, but it was not a red card, surely.
Yeah, but the way this has been framed is it is a pure trip. Like, and when I saw the first angle, I went, "Oh, that's a terrible. That's how could a referee possibly see that as anything other than a yellow card?" But there is an action on the shin, which is why they've given it. Like, I can see why. I'm not entirely sure that'll get overturned. Like, Mikel Arteta after the game was saying we won't even need to appeal for that. It's so bad. But I think they can argue that was a red card. That's not to say I agree it should have been a red card, but that's the framing of it in my eyes.
Graham, you've made an interesting point. My question for you then is, do you feel like Ryan is just parroting what other pundits are saying?
Ryan actually hasn't seen this incident. It's just a big Alan Shearer fan.
Season. I just know the conspiracy brain. I was just trying to stir it up. That's
Joe got my
I think I'm the only one
Joe.
who got your. I think I'm the only one who got your bit.
Nice.
Because pirates have parrots.
I had 2 levels to it.
All right, I'll see you guys later. I'll see myself out.
That was good.
But let's say this was pivotal. You said this was a pivotal moment, Graham, because on comes Calafiore after this incident, who scores the goal. So it had to happen. It was in the stars.
Well, I'm sure Arsenal would have preferred just play the match with 11 men. It was a good response from Arsenal because they'd been in that situation before this season and folded. There was the Man City game. What's the game? Is it Brighton where Declan Rice gets sent off for booting the ball away and they drop points in that game? So they have been, I think, down to 10 men in matches. I think this was the 4th time this season, and this is the first time they've won a match with 10 men. So this was a test for Arsenal, but they still managed to, with that change of bringing on Calafiori for Wanyeri, which was really unfortunate because he'd started the match really well. But they still managed to take the game to Wolves with 10 men, and they did a good job of keeping the game high so they could create opportunities. And obviously there's a risk factor to that because Wolves then can catch them on the counter, but they were never really able to do that, and they used Declan Rice and Trossard to get crosses into the box and ask questions of the Wolves defence that way. So I said a couple of weeks ago that some fragility had crept into Arsenal in some of their recent games. There was no sign of that here, and I give them credit for that. They ground it out.
They did indeed. Congrats to Arsenal, who do seem to attract odd red cards. Make of that what you will. Why don't we go across North London to Tottenham, who had a 2-1 home defeat at the hands of Leicester. They gave up a 1-0 half-time lead in this one. Pretty toxic mood at Tottenham. A fourth consecutive Premier League defeat this was. I mean, it wasn't the worst performance in the world from Tottenham. They hit the woodwork twice. They had a fair share of chances, but they did just kind of fall apart as well. And bear in mind, this time last season, Tottenham were fourth. They are 19 points worse off than they were in this position last year. They are 15th now. Spurs fans unfurled a banner with a message saying 24 years, 16 managers, 1 trophy, time for change. So the obvious joke is it 24 years, 17 managers, 1 trophy? Is that the change that we're going to see fairly soon, or something different?
Well, I mean, they're still in 2 cup competitions, so maybe that banner is going to be changed to 3 trophies by the end of the season, and Big Ange is going to have himself a Wigan of a season where Spurs end up getting relegated, but at least they've got a trophy to show for it. I am in worried for Big Ange territory now. I haven't really changed my opinion since last week, which was there's more to gain from sticking with the long-term plan than making a short-term decision to push Spurs a few places higher in the table. But having watched this game live, Tottenham feels like a really toxic place again in the way that it was under Conte and Mourinho. And I think a lot of the anger, you're right, Ryan, a lot of the protests were towards Daniel Levy, but I also saw fans shouting at Postecoglou, and when he's walking down the tunnel, there's a fan that leans over and shouts, "We're getting relegated under you," or words to that effect. So I think a lot
Graham,
of fans...
actually, we're going down with you. I think it was a message of support. It's like, we're with you no matter what.
With the ship, yeah, to continue the pirate analogy.
Yar.
Big Ange is the real pirate. So I think a lot of fans are now connecting the Levy stuff with Postecoglou, and I don't know whether that's fair or not, but I don't like it for his future prospects. And just sometimes, I felt this with Erik ten Hag last season, sometimes you feel like a manager's entered a spiral where even if they get a stay of execution, they turn things around a little bit. Ultimately, I'm now getting the sense that this is not going to end well for Postecoglou.
Graham, what was that list of names that had become toxic under Postecoglou? Conte, was there Mourinho? Was
Mourinho,
that one of them?
I mentioned as well,
yep. Yeah, it's a long list. It's almost like there's something deeper that's problematic and that firing your coach is not going to fix all this stuff. I don't know. I just don't feel like anything's changed. Tottenham aren't going to get relegated. They're also not going to do well this year. We are where we are, you know?
I think the
and that's coming as a Tottenham fan, by the way.
Absolutely. It's been that is canon. We have a Tottenham fan on board here. Taylor, obviously Daniel Levy's getting a lot of stick here, and perhaps rightly so. But then I look at, if you take a step back, Tottenham have the best stadium, arguably, in the Premier League, if not the world. The best training facility, arguably, in the Premier League, if not the world. They have levelled up in recent years. They got to a Champions League final in recent years. Postecoglou's had over 200 million to spend. So,
well, I mean, they did also sell their best player for 100 of that million.
There is
so,
that.
And then you compare that to other clubs.
I think they've got good market value at that point. I'd argue that was a good sale.
Well, I think the point would be that if you have 100 million coming in, you're then maybe able to spend a bit more money.
You spend double
it's
that.
Not like he's just kind of spending money that, like, you know, is his own or other people's. I think there's an idea that they have been frugal while at the same time spending money. If you can do both things simultaneously, I think they've spent a good chunk. One stat that I thought was really interesting, I saw this on Reddit. It is not my own thought. Spurs have 4 players in the top 100 best paid players in the Premier League. Son Heung-min is their top highest earner. He's around 30th on the list. Then it's Madison, Romero, and can anyone guess who their 4th best paid player is?
Solanke?
Ryan's favorite. Timo Werner.
Oh, nice.
They're all around 40th, and then Kulusevski is 102nd. So I think there's an idea that they might spend money.
Yeah.
And even though they're not spending a ton, they have a wage cap, they have this structure. They're not really then rolling out the salaries that maybe you need to keep those players happy, to keep everybody kind of pulling in the same direction, and to be able to lure in bigger and bigger names. And I think that is a point I have seen made, that in contrast with Man United, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, whomever else, like City or Spurs aren't really bringing in marquee signings that are sort of like promoting them into the next level, into that next stratosphere. It feels like they are kind of maintaining, and then once they have injuries, you can see how kind of threadbare that squad actually is.
Yeah, to drill down further into that £200 million that they spent, the players that they bought in the summer, Dominic Solanke, okay, first team player, ready to go. I actually think he's been excellent this season when he's been fit. He's injured at the moment, so he doesn't play in this game. The other players that they sign are Archie Gray, who's 17, 18 years old, Wilson Odebert, who is also extremely young, Antonin Kinski, the goalkeeper, who comes in January, that's not a summer signing, and then Lucas Bergvall. All of those players are project players, which then makes me think Postecoglou would be entitled to feel aggrieved if, at this point of the season, Spurs went project over. Because they haven't given him the players to achieve results in the short term. You add in the injuries as well. I mean, James Maddison doesn't play. He has a very good game against, who are they playing in the week? Hoffenheim in the Europa League. He's injured for this game. So even he comes out of this team. So you combine those two things, and I think Postecoglou has some grounds to say, give me more time to get this right.
Yeah, and to zoom out for just a second, because I think, I don't know, I want to take this in a slightly different direction. I think the timing of Tottenham's current struggles is a fascinating thing, because it's not just Tottenham having problems, it's Tottenham having problems, and Manchester United, you can loop into this bucket as well, and a ton of other teams in the Premier League spending a ton of money. So John Mueller had a really interesting post on Blue Sky about this. He's a good follow. And the idea is that England is getting more competitive as the non-traditional Big Six clubs sign more and more better players. So the graphic that John posted was 10 years ago, 29% of transfer market, so grain of salt, but transfer market's top 300 players in terms of value, 29% of those top players were in the Big Six. Then 7% were playing in the rest of England, and 65% were playing in the rest of Europe, right? So Big Six at 29%, rest of England at 7%, Europe at 65%. This year, like right now, 32% are in the Big Six, so 29 to 32, basically the same. The rest of England's share of these top 300 players has risen from 7% a decade ago to 21% now. It has tripled in the last decade, and Europe's share has gone down. So the Big Six share has stayed basically the same, but the rest of England, we're talking about Bournemouth, we're talking about Forest, we're talking about teams we've already mentioned on this show, are getting so much better, and they're spending more money. So when you're Tottenham, and you don't retool your squad effectively, and you miss on signings window after window, and you're not spending at the tippy top level like Man City or I guess Manchester United are doing that, so maybe it's a bad example. But Tottenham, when you slip on the banana peel, you don't just end up in 8th anymore. Like, you can end up in 15th, even if I do think they'll probably climb a little bit before the end of the season. It's just a brutal time for Big Ange to be in this situation if he indeed is going to be the one who has to take the fall, because all of the stars are aligning for Tottenham or Manchester United or whoever. When they goof up in a major way, you don't just get a little punished, you get a lot punished.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm not being like a billionaire apologist for Daniel Levy or anything. I'm just saying, like, if you look at what he's done for the club in the period he's been there, in terms of the facilities, in terms of what he's given,
sure,
I'd argue that he would say we have leveled up, is all.
Yeah, but you can level up, but also recognize that there is so much more ground to cover between you and the big boys, right? And that's just the story for Tottenham. And honestly, that's why I find a little bit, personally, the discussion about Tottenham like a bit tiresome, because it just seems really clear that their ceiling is, for the most part, lower than the top teams, and their floor is also lower than the absolute tippy top teams. And when you have the other teams spending more money outside of the Big Six, and when you are brutally injured and your squad wasn't that great to begin with, it just the recipe feels pretty clear that it's not going to turn out very well.
Yeah, Big Ange out is what Joe's saying. I think we all hear it pretty clearly.
100%.
Graham, my question for you, our resident Big Ange lover and knower, are there things that you think he could be doing? Like, are there things a new manager, if one were to come in, could change up? Because I'm inclined to say, looking at this team, we've talked about the injuries. I don't feel like there are players that are like truly frozen out. Like, maybe there's been some issues with Richarlison at various points, but it doesn't feel like there's a ton of players that have sort of clashed with Big Ange and now they're not involved and a new manager would bring back in. It just feels like it's injuries, and kind of no matter the formation, the same problems are going to be there.
Yeah, there's no players that I think he's overlooking because, frankly, he's playing all the players that are fit. I mean, Richarlison hasn't been playing because he's been injured. I know that's a shocking revelation about a Spurs player, but like he is now leading the line because Solanke's out injured. So there's nobody on the bench or whatever that I think drastically changes things for Spurs. I did look at the midfield setup in this game and think something's not right. And there is something that Postecoglou could feasibly do about that because the Spurs midfield in the last two matches has been wide open. We saw it in the Everton game where they kept striding forward into space from midfield, which is not something Everton typically do as a team. I know they've now got David Moyes as a manager over Sean Dyche, but it's still the same players that they've had all season, and that's where they've struggled. But against Spurs, they had so much space. And then in this game, it happened as well, where Bentancur was left on an island for so much of the match. And there were phases of this game where Bergvall and Sarr looked, to my eye, too advanced. They looked like they were too far up the pitch. That meant when the ball was turned over, and Spurs did a bunch of that in this game, then Leicester City, who, by the way, are set up with players like Jimmy Vardy to hit you in quick transition or on the break and attack open space, and it just felt like there was a fragmentation of that midfield unit. So I don't know whether that is just as simple as pulling Lucas Bergvall back, or Sarr actually is maybe the more natural option to pull him back into a double pivot with Bentancur. But Bentancur seemed to be doing a huge amount of running in the centre of the pitch without any reward, and that seemed like a structural issue.
There we go. All right. Well, Leicester's win, by the way, listed then to 17th. Very, very valuable points for them at Tottenham. A couple more games from the Premier League to go through. Newcastle with a 3-1 win at Southampton. A comeback win for Newcastle this was. Of course, Alexander Isak with a brace here, putting the Geordies back on course. As Graham mentioned, Everton with a 1-0 win over Brighton here with David Moyes in charge. Calvert-Lewin, the injury didn't look too good in that one. We hope the best for him. Pop quiz. David Moyes has managed 700 Premier League games.
True.
As of this game. That's true. That is not the question. The question is, Taylor, how many of those games were for Manchester United?
Premier League games, you said, not all competitions.
Premier League games. Out of 700, how many were Man United?
So he was sacked when Manchester United couldn't qualify for the top four officially. So I'm after a game against Everton, ironically, I think it was, Taylor. So I'm saying that was like 5 or 6 games from the end of the season. I'll say 32 matches for Man United.
Wow.
I believe 34.
Joe, any guesses?
33.
It was, in fact, 34. That surprised me.
Oh.
It surprised me he was only there for, of course, he's just there for the one season. And, of course, popular former midfielder who's withdrawn from public life for some reason, Ryan Giggs, took over at the end.
The greatest...
And
delivered the greatest team talk of all time, if people haven't ever seen that. It is the most monotone, mumbled, quiet, all right, lads, let's go out and win this game, I guess. And, it's exciting times to play for Manchester United. Who could have seen that things wouldn't go well from that moment on? Who could have known, possibly?
Indeed. Written in the stars once again. But Man United did get a 1-0 win at Fulham this weekend on Sunday with the Lisandro Martinez goal. Happy birthday today to Ruben Amorim, who turned 40 today. He joked in his press conference, "It's not 40, I'm 50. After 2 months at Man United, I'm 50. He said that in a press conference.
I like him. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to help my next situation, but it's funny.
I think it does. I truly think it does. I think that he's still making jokes, even if they are self-deprecating or mocking the situation he finds himself in. If you're making jokes, at least there is some good humor, there is some positivity, there are some good vibes. If he was just like, yes, it is my birthday and I am sad, then I would be a little bit more concerned about where things are going from here. And he would be entitled to have that opinion as well.
Yeah, there you go. Not too much to report from that game. I think both teams basically had like 0 XG throughout.
It was game, horrific. So, I watched this match on Sunday night and wished I hadn't.
Heroically horrific. 1-0. That's how champions win, baby.
You know how presidents often, you see the start of the inauguration to their final day, and like they've aged like 30 years in that period. I wonder if Amarim's going to have that effect by the end of the season. He's going to look like an old withered man.
He's got such lovely hair, though. He's handsome.
Not
I don't
for long.
want that to change.
We'll see.
He'll be a bald fraud before the end of the season.
There we go.
For now, he's just a fraud.
Just staring at himself in the mirror as he shaves his head. Like, I know what I am.
Oh boy. On that note, we take a quick break. When we come back, we go around the continent. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our weekend review. Let's take a stop in Serie A, where we had a big game for Napoli. A 2-1 win over Juventus. Anguissa and Lukaku with the goals. A comeback win here for the league leaders. Randall Colomuani in his debut on loan for PSG as well, with the consolation for Juventus. A lovely turn and hit for the opener in this one. Where do we start? Graham, we had McKennie at right back as well in this one. Tim Weah unused, but a very good win for Napoli here.
Yeah, so this match was the old cliched, I can't believe I'm going to use this actually on the show, but the game of two halves, because I thought Juve in the first half, it was really positive from them, and it was an extension of what we saw last week against Milan, where they were assertive on the ball from the start. They were managing to evade the Napoli press. I thought Cope Miners was getting on the ball a lot and punching passes forward into Colomuani, who, as you say, Ryan, scores that very nice opportunistic goal on the swivel volley before half time. I think it comes off a Napoli player, which is why he is not offside in that moment, because that might be a bit confusing if you've just seen one view of that goal. But I thought Juve were setting pressing traps really well, and they would send Nico Gonzalez forward. I saw this really nice video on Twitter about how they were sending Nico Gonzalez forward, and then they would collapse on Napoli behind him, and that all seemed to be designed, and they were executing it very well, and that was stopping Napoli from getting into quick transition moments when they wanted to. The difference from Napoli in the second half was astonishing, because they hassled and harried the life out of Juve, and Juve in the second half had 0 XG, 0 shots, 0 big chances, so they made absolutely 0 attacking impression on that match. And I thought the Napoli right side became a factor with Di Lorenzo inverting. Anguissa, I thought, had a really good game. I think, Taylor, from your notes, you're really positive on Anguissa's performance here. Yeah. He was providing a penalty box presence. And there was a moment, just going back to like the hassling and harrying of Napoli, there was a moment near the end where Politano chases Colomuani all the way to the corner flag like a madman, makes a tackle, makes a second tackle, and then gets up and celebrates it like a goal. There was another moment when Simeone comes off the bench and he's barging his way through tackles. He then falls to the ground and then tries to tackle a Juve player with his head, which just felt like quintessentially Antonio Conte. And I think it's astonishing how he has turned this team around when you remember where they were at the start of the season, where they lose that first game of the season 3-0 to Verona. There's protests from the fans about a lack of transfers. Osman gets loaned out to Galatasaray at the end of that whole messy situation. Kvaratskhelia joins PSG, obviously, in this window. And you look at how he's moulded this team with signings that, McTominay was a good signing, but Lukaku came in, people thought he was washed in Serie A, and he has moulded this team into a side that ultimately maybe might still get edged out in the Scudetto race by a very good Inter team. But they're up there. They are genuine title contenders, and it's very impressive.
Suddenly that take is in vogue?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll give you credit where credit is due, because Joe has, I think, long said Inter are still the most likely team to win the title. And I will say, I watched this game first before seeing the Inter game, and I thought, I don't know, man. Like, this is the type of win you need if you want to be champions. You grind out a win against Juve where it doesn't seem like you're going to win. I agree with Graham. I thought Juventus were much more the impressive team in that first half. And then Napoli just find a way to win. A lot of that does, I think, come from Anguissa, who I think is just so important for this team. He is, I think, incredibly underrated, maybe because he plays for Napoli and so he doesn't get as much attention. But he does so many things for them on both sides of the ball. And it's just clearly a leader in terms of energy and in terms of fight and belief. And maybe it's scoring a goal, as it was in this game, but sometimes it's getting an assist, sometimes it's making a tackle, sometimes it's just carrying the ball forward and causing confusion for the defense. I think he is comprehensively so good for Napoli and one of their best performers that I thought maybe this is the kind of statement game for them on their way to the title. And then I watched Inter just take apart Lecce in unceremonious and almost bored fashion, and it made me think that maybe they are quite good, and maybe Joe's onto something with Inter just being a very strong attacking team. Taking a look at the table, they are behind Napoli, however they do have a game in hand, and then if they win that one, which I would expect them to,
15 goals better on goal
there is
differential
that.
Right yeah,
there is that.
I want to be clear. I enjoy this Napoli team a lot, and I think they are quite good. I think they were quite good in this game, even after the first half, where I agree with Graham. It was more one-way traffic for Juventus. Napoli didn't create a lot of chances. The goal that Moani scores is kind of a fluky, weird ball bouncing in the box sort of moment. Like, Napoli defensively throughout most of this game, I thought, were quite good, if a bit chaotic, but that kind of ran both ways. In the second half, they were the better team by a country mile, and we've already kind of gotten to that. My big takeaway from this game is is less about Napoli, although I think we have done a good job of giving them credit, so I feel okay to take us back to Juve here. It's that Juve have a real problem, and it is that their attacking play is just not very good. And honestly, I think that is more personnel than I think it's tactics from Thiago Motta. You look at the wingers and the players they brought in this summer, and you look at really the lack of goal scoring they've had across the squad. It's a huge issue. Like, I don't. Do any of us believe that Nico Gonzalez or that Yildiz or even Tim Weah or Mbangula, like, do any of us believe that those players are transformative attacking players in Serie A? I at least don't. At least not yet. I think Yildiz is a fun young player at 19, and he's been okay this year, but they don't have the attacking thrust. And that's why I think they're going to be a fascinating team to watch now that they have signed Kolomuani, because they need him to be the answer. Or they need Vlahovic to give that, like, they need something from somewhere. And Kolomuani coming in is an interesting time for this team to try to show something. A team that is 7th in Serie A in expected goals right now. They don't create a lot of chances relative to the top teams. And you know what? In this game, when they needed a goal for 20 plus minutes, they could not get anywhere near actually putting the ball in the back of the net. That has been the problem for them all year long, and it seems like it's going to continue to be, but we'll see if Moani changes anything.
Yeah. Notable, by the way, Juventus' first defeat of the season as well, this one, ending their undefeated streak. Now, I don't often get up in time for the 6:30 Eastern kickoff on a Sunday morning, but I'm very glad I was up early this Sunday because I caught Milan 3, Parma 2. Particularly the ending of this one, Graham, was completely breathless. Comeback win in added time for Milan. This was Reinders and Chukwueze with the goals that turned it around. Christian Pulisic with the opener for Milan after they went a goal down in this one, and Yunus Musa with an assist for Milan's second as well. And of course, all the power from the Rossoneri coming from Kyle Walker watching from the stands. So a very good win, Graham, for Milan here.
Yeah, it was a good win, and I would highlight the spirit to turn around this match so late on. It was impressive. This was overall a bad game for Milan, though, who were really sloppy. And credit to Parma, they went to San Siro and they played with bravery, and they got forward when they could. And Mignon had to make a number of saves to stop them from scoring more from two. And there was just so much space left for them by Milan, who haven't been anywhere near as defensively compact and resolute as I expected them to be under Sergio Conceição. And obviously, he's only newly into the job. He's only had a handful of games, but nonetheless I expected that would be an immediate impact of him coming into that team, and that hasn't really been the case. You mentioned Yunus Musa's assist there, Ryan. That is not one of the Tyler Adams Bournemouth's assists either. It definitely deserves to be highlighted because the run from Reinders is good, but Musa has to squeeze. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Musa has to squeeze it through two Parma players from a deep position. He's like 40 yards out from goal. It's not like he's on the edge of the box. And he does it with so much precision. And then it gets Reinders like 6 yards out from goal. It's a tremendous pass. And as you say, Pulisic also scored a penalty. But the Musa pass was the real American highlight from this match. My personal highlight, though, was Conceição celebrating this incredible comeback by sprinting onto the pitch to square up to his captain, David Calabria, for reasons unknown. I haven't seen any explanation. I've seen some theories that he maybe went to a concert on Friday night, or when Parma scored their second goal. I think he was on the bench. He maybe went back to the dressing room, and Conceição didn't like that. But yeah, incredible scenes at the end with Conceição having to be held back from his own captain from fighting him.
So they get the winner in what, the 90 plus 5th, 7th?
Yeah,
something
like
that?
5th or 6th or something like that.
And then I have not seen this. And then that's his moment when he just runs onto the pitch and then squares up.
So imagine, you remember Jose Mourinho's goal, or Porto's goal against Manchester United, and Jose Mourinho goes sprinting down the touchline. Full-time whistle goes, Conceição's away onto the pitch. He makes a beeline for David Calabria, and the players and staff have to hold him back, and he's like shouting stuff at him, and it was wild. I don't know. I mean, Calabria's going to get replaced by Kyle Walker in this team, so he'll fondly remember his final match for Milan due to the manager squaring up to him. But it was wild.
I wish they'd gone full pro wrestling, and as that happened, you hear the glass shatter. Kyle Walker runs on with a chair and just hits Calabria in the back, and that's it for Calabria. He rolls out of the pitch, and Kyle Walker is there, resplendent for the rest of the season. I'm into it.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
That's Kyle Walker's music.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Good God.
I mean, yep. Say what you like about Milan's performance, though, but the Conceição team does fight through the end. I think that is evident very much from this display.
I mean, he's nuts. Like, he's obviously someone that we've known for a while at Porto, but he's now in a league where we're seeing more of him. We're seeing more of his personality. He seems like a madman. Like the celebrations after the Supercoppa, with that whole dance with the cigarette, the cigar, and the dancing, and now fighting with Calabria. I mean, great fun, but he does seem does seem a little bit nuts.
Good. You need a bit of that. As mentioned, Inter with a 4-0 win at Lecce. Atalanta with the 2-1 win at Como's over Retegui brace for them, keeping them vaguely in the pack for the Serie A title race as well. To the Bundesliga! Bayern Munich had a 2-1 win at Freiburg. Harry Kane, he scored a goal from open play, Taylor. He didn't score a penalty. It was from open play, Harry Kane. And it was quite good as well. Had a nice assist going on for it as well. From Eric Dyer, if I remember correctly. But a 17th league goal this season for Harry
so that's
Kane.
where Spurs went.
Yeah.
They're in the Bundesliga now.
They are scoring goals in the Bundesliga, Taylor.
Did it make you feel warm and fuzzy, Ryan? Were you happy for him?
For Kane or Dyer?
For either one. Mostly Kane.
Both.
Yeah?
Mostly Kane, yeah. He can still do it. He can still not score from 12 yards. Wonderful.
I do love that Ryan has that love for Harry Kane that I have for basically every member of the U.S. men's national team. That you sort of are always kind of quietly pulling for him and always want him to do well. And I'm glad that he performed well for you and for Bayern Munich. I also, I guess, I'm not glad, but I will say congratulations to Bayern Munich for winning the title. That's great for them. Because I also watched the Leverkusen game, and my goodness, do Leverkusen have some problems. Not obvious problems, not they're going to self-destruct problems. But it's the exact same thing we saw against Atletico Madrid midweek in the Champions League, where they have full control of the game, have absolutely no business letting the other team back into it. And to be fair, Leipzig's goals are both fairly fortunate, including the equalizer late that I think is an own goal that maybe was going to be offside, but then wasn't offside because it's an own goal. But it's a couple chaotic goals in this one for Leipzig. But they really didn't offer much, and Leverkusen were in total control of this game, especially in the first half. And I just think, once again, we saw them not really perform at the level that they needed to and kind of stay at that level. Florian Wirtz was incredible in this game, but also hits the woodwork 3 times and has moments where I think maybe should have scored, maybe should have passed for the kind of easy tap-in goal. I still don't want to blame him because I think he was so instrumental in this game and has been so good for Leverkusen. But when you see those chances and you're winning, you think like, oh, what an exceptional player. They're so good. They're so strong. When they then end up coughing up 2 points, you see those in a different lens of, oh, they're not finishing. They're not taking those opportunities. They're not making it a 3-goal lead or a full 4-goal lead or fully killing this game off. And I think that is the thing that they did last season and aren't doing this year. So that game was really interesting to me because it felt for all the world like, here we go. This is Leverkusen doing Leverkusen things. They are comprehensively the better team. They are going to win this one comfortably. They're up 2-0, no problem at all. And then it finishes 2-2, and I think there are some problems there.
Yes, indeed. That one finishing in a Desmond, as did Borussia Dortmund, a 2-2 draw with Werder Bremen, ending a run of 4 straight defeats for Dortmund. Joe, we call a 2-2 a Desmond. Sir Archbishop Desmond 2-2. Do try to keep up, Joe. Finally, La Liga.
I'll hold my hand up. My fault.
Barcelona 7, Valencia 1. Barcelona on fire, Joe. Discuss.
So fun. This team at their best and against potentially struggling opposition is my favorite soccer team on the planet by a pretty wide margin. They were up 4-0 inside 24 minutes. They're up 5-0 at halftime. Lamine Yamal was absolutely saucing multiple dudes up on the right wing at many different moments. He's got the assist on the opener, a filthy nutmeg later in the first half as well. Barcelona were free-flowing. Ferran Torres looked quite good as the number 9 in this game, and that is something to watch maybe going forward. Rafinha was quite good on the left side as well. Everybody for Barcelona was good in this game, basically. It was so much fun to watch them move the ball around, even without Pedri in that midfield. And they do have an eye on Champions League stuff coming on later this week, so no Lewandowski either. Even with a slightly rotated squad, they are just must-see TV. Because you either know things are going to go great and they're going to dismantle somebody, or they are going to be on the other side of that. So I enjoyed this game very much.
Yeah, fun stuff indeed. And Graham, finally, Real Madrid with a 3-0 win at Valladolid. Kylian Mbappe with the hattie, his first one for Real, put them 4 points clear at the top after Atleti drew with Villarreal.
Yeah, with Real Madrid, you can basically just retweet what I said on last week's weekend review after the Las Palmas game because the same applies here. They basically produced the same performance. Mbappe, as you mentioned, Ryan, firing on all cylinders. I think the discussion point from earlier this season of him not being integrated into this team is gone for good. And Rodrigo's playing brilliantly off the left, and the midfield with Ceballos and Valverde is working really well. Real Madrid have scored 17 goals in their last 4 games since losing to Barcelona in the Supercopa. So they are working very well. They found a good balance. I think Vinicius is back for the Espanyol game this weekend, he was still suspended for this one. So let's see how he fits into everything. That's the last question mark with his team. How do they get him working with Vinicius and Rodrigo and Bellingham and Mbappe? But we saw it last week in the Champions League against Salzburg when they absolutely smashed them 5-1. So I think Real Madrid are in their groove, which we've seen before in past seasons. When it gets into the new year, they sit forward in their seat.
There we go. Rinse and repeat for Real Madrid. Thank you very much indeed, Graham. Thank you to everybody who's been listening to this podcast. We are out with Weekend Review. If you want more Weekend Review Extra coming to our bonus feed, more details at patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, my friend.
Graham Ruthven, pleasure as always, my good man.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And Joselu Lowry, thank you very much, sir.
Go Spurs!
Yay! There we go. We are Pro Spurs, always and forever on Total Soccer Show. Thank you, listener, for joining us on this one. We'll be back on the feed very shortly, but for now, bye!